Welcome back into another edition of the Fourth Man Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony, and appreciate everyone who's tuning back into the final edition of the regularly scheduled program. This show, Big Three, has named a champion. Enemies have earned a championship as they come away with the 2023 Big Three championship game. We got a lot to discuss. It's been a couple weeks. I was out for various reasons. I was sick last week. Prior week, guest alignment didn't necessarily come together as I had a couple of guests lined up. So felt like I didn't just want to talk about the playoffs or couldn't just talk about the playoffs over my social media. That's what we did there. But back and better than ever to close the season out and then move to, a month-to-month show. Most of the stuff that we post will be from a social media perspective. But thanks again for everyone tuning in, and really just want to thank you guys for rocking with us the whole entire season. Got a great show for you lined up. We're going to recap the Big Three championship game, go through the All-Star game, and talk about Jaylen Brown's big appearance, what it means for the Big Three. Quickly give you a recap of just some of the highlights of the season, touch on some big names that we saw play this year, that joined the league play this year, as well as maybe just give you a little preview of who we think could join the league. And we'll wrap it up with the offseason schedule, at least for the show, and kind of what that looks like, especially if you're new to the show. I know we have a lot of new listeners, new people in the community, so just kind of want to give you an idea of what that looks like, because the only unfortunate part about life in the Big Three is this is the longest offseason in sports. So thanks again for everyone to tune in. Before we jump into all that, make sure you're following the show at Fourth Man Pod on all social media platforms. You can also find us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and hit the post notification bell over there. And then just want to give a big shout out to Believe Network as always. I mean, they're one of the few platforms that has given us a chance to talk about the Big Three at a high scale. They help us out with various things that go in on the behind the scenes perspective. So thank you again to Believe for always rocking with us and kind of, rocking with our schedule a little bit. It's not necessarily ideal, so we appreciate the flexibility on their end for, not necessarily being a program that's run from a week-to-week basis, because it is a short season, because it's only run in the summer. So let's get into it. Enemies, Big Three champions, the fourth ever champion in the Big Three. And this is monumental for the league. One, because the way in which they did it. I mean, we're talking about a team that hasn't had a lot of high expectations because of their rep in the past. They had really good teams that didn't necessarily end up in playoff winning championship level contenders. And then even this year, starting out 1-2, despite being in a field of teams where 7 of the 12 clubs in the Big Three were at 2-1 at one point. Enemies was at 1-2, didn't get off to the hottest start. And to cap it off by knocking off the 3-time and defending champion Trilogy in the playoffs, and doing so in a kind of dominating fashion to a degree, holding those guys like Earl Clark and Hezegod to not their best games of the season, and then being able to knock off the 2019 champions and Triplets, who had a resurgent year. What an incredible year. I mean, I can't say enough about Enemies. I think they had the MVP in Jordan Crawford, but and just the way they did it, to end the season in a highlight fashion, and the way they did it, beat a lot of really good teams, killer threes. They beat Enemies. Obviously, they beat the 2 teams in the playoffs. So big round of applause to Enemies. It's good to have a little parity in the league, I think. And so we only had 3 champions in 5 years, because Trilogy's been so dominant year in and year out. But for Enemies to come in and do what they did, took it a little bit more seriously. I felt like this year, I think a lot of that kudos is to Jordan Crawford. Nick Young was a player captain, a player coach, I should say, but was mostly a coach down the stretch. And kind of like, I'm not saying he necessarily has a big ego, but to kind of like not hone into that so much, and not feel like he had to play. He did what was best for the team. I think that takes a lot of pride, but also too, great job, in terms of usage of players, making the right substitutions, drawing up a few things here and there, knowing when to go to certain guys because they're hot. I mean, just a masterful performance after taking over as coach. And then big shouts out to Isaiah Austin, Elijah Stewart, Quincy Miller, all guys that have been in the league for a while, some of them for Enemies only, and to win a championship, that's huge. Zeke, I think, had his best game of the year, and on the biggest stage, at the highest stage. So big shout out to them. And then Elijah Stewart, big game as well, 19 points. So big shout out to Enemies. I want to say also congratulations to Triplets. It wasn't, it hasn't necessarily been the best of times since they got bounced in the playoffs back in 2021. They had a rough year last year, but to make the resurgence that they did, kind of show people again, like, this is how dominant this team can be. Just, I think, a solid season. I'm sure they would say that they didn't play to their best, not the performance, excuse me, that you wanted in the biggest game of the season to go win your second championship, but to just honestly a good season and to all the playoff teams. It was really a really great showcasing from all of them. Trilogy's another team that started 1-2 on the year. They lost Isaiah Briscoe, brought in Hezzy God, and they won 5 games to close out the season and make it back into the playoffs to contend for another championship. Ghost Ballers making the playoffs for the first time since 2017. You know, adding Jonathan Simmons, being able to get over that hump in the past few years. They've started the season hot, and then they closed out the season and in an unformidable fashion where they've struggled down the stretch. So kudos to them, and then making it a competitive, tough game, like a game they probably are kicking themselves. Probably should have beat Triplets because of how many free throws they missed when they had the opportunity to get easy points. So just a congratulations to all 4 of those teams, but obviously a big congrats to Enemies winning their first title, really coming from out of nowhere to all the way to the top. It's pretty special. You know, a team that's been 1-5, 2-6, 3-5 their first year. They haven't had a winning season until this year. They hadn't made the playoffs. I know we've harped on this a lot, but to do what they do is really impressive. And a big shout out to you know, the Enemy squad. Again, you know, I think we'll obviously have more shows throughout the rest of the year. I'll talk about the offseason schedule a little bit, but you know, one of the first shows we'll have as we move to a month-to-month schedule, which is typically what we do, will be to talk about, you know, the different awards. And I think Jordan Crawford has a good chance to win the MVP. We probably saw our defensive player of the game of the year in that game as well, and maybe in Larry Sanders. Earl Clark, obviously being the reigning defensive player of the year, has a good solid chance at that too after another, you know, dominant season on the other end that isn't discussed as much. So, you know, we'll definitely have to come on and talk about that. But it wasn't just a matchful day because of the championship. Obviously, that was a highlight of the day. But we also had the All-Star game that took place in London. And first off, huge shout out to just the league and everybody in the community for an incredible year. I mean, even the teams that didn't make the playoffs, a lot of teams had great performances. We saw a historic season from Ball Hogs. We saw a great season from Killer Threes. You know, we saw a ton of teams, you know, Aliens who at one time was 0-5, or, you know, were 0-5 heading into their last game. They ended their year strong, winning the last game of the season. So it was always a ton of teams with grit. It was one of the more, I wouldn't say, I guess, talent-wise, I know a lot of guys have said it's not necessarily the best year, but in terms of competitiveness, how many guys took it seriously, how many coaches took it seriously, it felt like that was where the competitiveness was at an all-time high. But, you know, going back to the day in London and taking this thing international, once again, they've been in the Bahamas, now coming here to London. Another big part of that was we got to see the All-Star game. And so first off, in what other league can you get an All-Star game and a championship for the price of one ticket? Okay, just sit on that for a second. And next time, you know, championship happens next year, maybe take what I said into consideration when thinking whether or not you should go to the game. I know it was in London, so it's a little bit tougher. But if it's back in the States, you know, sit on that for a little bit. But 2, the All-Star game not only featured the best Big 3 players from this past season, also featured Jaylen Brown, which I think a lot of us are familiar with at this point. Not only the player himself, but the fact that he actually played in the All-Star game. And, you know, Jaylen, I feel like the impact he has on the league is obviously bigger than basketball because it's been a tough go since the COVID year. And for him to, you know, it's been the past couple of years haven't necessarily been the best. They've had challenges financially. They've had challenges with viewership. They've had challenges with just basically they were thrown a reset after the COVID year. They had 3 great years, COVID, and now here you are in year 3 post-COVID after 2020 not having a year. And Jaylen Brown not only attended the game, which I think is huge. I think guys with prominent names who support the league and really support the league in the sense that they show up and come for, you know, the whole entire day as an event, because it's not just basketball, right? We have musical performances, they have halftime shows, whatever the case is. It's more than just a game. It's an event. You get multiple games, you get entertainment, etc. So for a guy to show up and support that just on that level is huge, I would say. I think, you know, Cube shows his appreciation for that time and time again. Jeff Quanonetz shows his appreciation. The players, I'm sure, really enjoy it. And we've seen a lot of big names come to the league. But Jaylen Brown took it to another level. Jaylen Brown played in the All-Star game. He suited up for Team Big and competed against some of these guys to show how much of support he's in. A black-owned business. I think the only professional sports league that's black-owned, and it's really it should be no surprise because of what Jaylen Brown has done as an activist off the court. He's really wanted to give back to the community. I got to see a little bit of that firsthand when I lived in Atlanta and what he was doing during the 2019, 2020 kind of a year when there was a lot of activism going on around there. But it's just such a kudos to not only him but also to to the league. I mean, more kudos to him obviously because he's the one that kind of went out of his way and did this, suited up in the game. But also kudos, I think, to the league to show that what they built hasn't been a waste of time. What they built is a good product, and I think it's gonna be. It was just such a huge milestone for the league. I don't think they ever necessarily intended for a current active NBA player to play in the league in the 6th year, but to do so just it gives a lot of belief, not only in, and I'm sure league owners and players, but also to the community and the fans, people that love it like myself, that what we're invested in, it's a good showing. Like it's not something that is like people are testing the waters and hope it works. Like this is something that's very entertaining, very much worth spending time in whatever capacity watching, making content on, etc. So huge shout out to Jaylen Brown. He had 9 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists for Team Big when his team actually lost. And the crazy part about all that is there were rumors that another player was supposed to play on the other team, another NBA player. So I think it's just a monumental moment because I think it's going to do wonders for the league starting as early as next year. I think because Jaylen Brown and his stature and prominence in the basketball, in the basketball brotherhood community is kind of setting a standard and credibility of, hey, if Jaylen Brown's not too big of this, the guy who just received the richest contract in NBA history, if he's not too big for this, like other people shouldn't be feeling that way either. And I know there's been a few players that have felt like a little bit of disrespect when we thought it might be, a good chance for them to showcase themselves again and playing it really competitively. We've heard that in the past, but Jaylen Brown, was willing to play with it. We had Jordan Crawford on a few weeks ago, and he continues to express this. Is at the end of the championship, he said, "This is the league." What he brings to the table is more than what the big three is necessarily doing to provide him. I mean, there's a lot of people that have a lot of belief in this, and so if their egos aren't too big, they're open-minded about this, I feel like it's going to give a lot of credibility to other guys who maybe are unsure about it, or they're shying away because they're scared of what other people will say. People are judgmental in the world, especially in the world of social media. So huge shout out to Jaylen Brown. The impact is phenomenal. I'm sure a ton of people have touched on this, talked about this in the background. I've seen multiple posts out here, and I don't necessarily feel like I need to go on a monologue about it, but I think it's more for me as someone who's been invested in this league for a long time. Obviously, I'm recording a podcast year over year over year. I'm making content, and again, I mentioned at the top of the show, the longest offseason in sports. It's not necessarily always easy. I have a lot of passion for this league, and I have a lot of drive for this league, but sometimes there is a sense of hesitancy and just kind of like a reflecting moment of what will happen with this league, especially after that COVID year. We saw fans not being able to show up to games or being in that bubble setting, and it kind of took away some of the joy of what happened with the league originally when they were able to travel and go back. But this was like a cherry on top, and obviously the championship game, enemies winning and all that. So like that day in general was just cherry on top of a fantastic season of people showing out, communities being more involved, players feeling I guess more ingrained and competitive in this league. Like it was just a really fantastic season. I mean, the best one to date for sure. I know we say that year after year because it's the new season. Obviously, everyone's in with the new, out with the old sometimes. But I mean, just wonders like levels of how great this year was. So and that was a cherry on top. So big shout out to Jaylen Brown. Big shout out to everybody, all the players that play in this league, all the coaches that play in this league, or the coach in this league. You know, you guys have been the ones from the very beginning who believed in that mission, and you know, alongside me. And so that should already make me feel like I shouldn't be going anywhere. Anyways, not that I would, but you know, just on a larger scale, it's like it's not even a larger scale in the sense of prominence of names. It's a larger scale in the sense of outside the big three bias, and you know, to see that there's other people that appreciate this league and are willing to support this league, make this league go as long as possible. Like, yes, I'm here for it. And I know a lot of people are too. So All-Star game, you know, like I said, Jaylen Brown's team didn't win. You know, the All-Star MVP was Jody Meeks. He went off to start the game and kind of capped it off there as well toward the end. But Team 3 beating Team Big 51-42. But it was cool to see. You know, I'm excited to see if that's a format that they'll continue to run where like other active NBA players might play in it. Hopefully the NBA won't come through and try to axe that and prevent guys from playing because again, it's one game. You know, Jaylen Brown wasn't playing throughout the entirety of the game. And also too, he played for charity. You know, he played for London Youth. He was giving back to the community while doing all this, which, you know, obviously goes back to what we were talking about his character earlier. But like, if it's a community event at the end of the day for him, and while being able to support a black-owned business in the Big Three, so you know, hopefully the NBA doesn't come down with some kind of sanctions or something. That would be feel like kind of inappropriate and unnecessary. But yeah, I can't say enough about that day. So we'll move on to our next topic and kind of just talk about a quick recap of the season. I mean, first off, 2 new playoff teams that we got to see. 3 if you want to include triplets, just because they weren't in the playoffs last year. So got a lot of parity from that point of view. We crowned our 4th champion this year in enemies. So a new champion. It's now 2 of the 4 expansion teams now have won a championship. So Aliens and Bivlap, we're waiting on you guys to make it happen. Bivlap, we're waiting on. Hopefully next year's the year they make their first playoff run. They definitely got the foundation set. They just got to put the right pieces together, I think. So a lot of new additions to the league. You know, I think the biggest win, I talked about it a lot last offseason, was just getting Joe back. Whatever happened with Joe, I think it was important for ISO Joe to be in this league. I think he's one of the prominent faces of this. Some people called him the face of the league for a long time. I don't know if they still feel that after this season because of how many great performances we saw from other guys. But Joe, I think, silently went about his business, and I think he's a huge proponent to this league being successful. In great shape, you know, MVP conversation once again. But I do think it was great seeing guys like Tony Allen join, Hezzy God put on matchable performances. We saw a new Big Three scoring record be broken by the one and only Hezzy God. Saw Brandon Moss. I thought was a great addition. I think he's going to be a high pick next year. If he's not, you know, I know politics are involved, but if he's not, that's pretty crazy. And so we saw a lot of new faces. I thought we saw a lot of good stuff from the Big Three team as well. Just like the internal team, social media team did a good job. A lot of good content. A lot more people. You know, not even before Jaylen Brown played in this Big Three game. You know, there's obviously a lot of publicity after he played in it from bigger news networks. But even before that, I think we saw a lot more people get excited about creating content and showing off these players' highlights throughout the year. So I know I kind of already talked about it, like successful season. It was a great year, but you know, just to add to that, just I guess to add more specifics to that, those are some of the things that we got to see this year. We saw maybe the most competitive year yet today. I mean, leading up into the last week, we had, I would say, about 7 teams that had a significant, like, you know, a real chance, not significant, a real chance in making the playoffs, making those last 4 spots. If you really think about it, like Ghost Ballers made the playoffs barely over Killer Threes because of enemies winning. There was some kind of nuance to it. Now it's kind of escaping my head here, but if it was basically like if Ball, that's what it was. If Ball Hogs would have beat Trilogy, it would have been Killer Threes in and not Ghost Ballers. Like, think about that. Like, that's how close it was throughout the entire season. And even, you know, down the stretch, I kind of like the format of like eliminating teams as the season goes on. So, you know, not everyone gets to play 8 games anymore, but it's kind of an interesting format because not only do you really make the race tighter towards the end, but also you have the spoiler plays. I mean, I think Aliens played huge spoilers toward Tri-State when they won their one and only game. And yes, Tri-State made it to the final 8, but to lose that game was significant. Obviously, they didn't have Jason Richardson, but they're the only team that lost to them, and they suffered huge ramifications from it. So I kind of like that format, new style format. We'll see if we see that again. Great bring the fire moments. This was an incredible year. The stands were packed again. We saw a new championship hub. We saw some different celebrities playing in the celebrity game. We saw Jaylen Brown playing in the All-Star game, as mentioned already. I mean, what a season! I couldn't ask for a better season. It's got me amped up for this offseason. We got a lot of good stuff coming in the offseason, but we touched on some players that we did see played in this year's league. I mean, there's some players that I think, because of the way the season played out, because of the support that was given from other big prominent names, I think there's some other players that we could we have a realistic shot of seeing next year. I think someone like Lou Williams would be willing to play in this league. I'd love to see someone like Lance Stevenson play in this league. I don't know if I know he's still making the NBA comeback, but maybe this is a way for teams to see him again play on a high stage. Like, I think Jordan Crawford, if he's not getting NBA offers, like it's absurd. We've seen other guys make the jump from NBA from Big Three to the NBA. Like, Jordan Crawford should be getting legit offers, whether he wants them or not. I know he's very invested in this league now, whether he wants them or not, but he should be getting crazy offers after this year. He shot 60% from three. He only missed 23s all year, 32s all season, 50 shots. The leading scorer, one of the top 3 scorers in this league, had the most points in this league, like total. So Jordan Crawford should be a legitimate shot. So I think that being said, Lance Stevenson could have a similar impact if he came in. You never know. It might not necessarily be from a scoring game, but just being able to see him play again on a competitive level, I think the Big Three is a legit shot. We've talked about this all year. I'd love to see someone like Tyreke Evans play. We only got to see a glimpse of him in the G League since he was reinstated from his suspension in the NBA. Like, Tyreke Evans would make a great addition. I think he used to work out with Michael Beasley and Mario Chalmers. There's a co-captain spot I know that was filled by Tony Allen midway through the year, but maybe they open that back up and bring Tyreke in. Michael Beasley, Mario Chalmers, Tyreke Evans. That'd be insane for Three's Company. I think that would be, I thought Three's Company should be a playoff team forever. That would definitely make them a playoff team, no doubt in my mind. That's got to be. But I'd love to see Tyreke Evans play. I just want to see him play in general again, right? Like, we can see guys play overseas or in Central, South America, but would love to see these guys play here in the States, just on, I guess we're kind of used to seeing them play in their home countries. Who are some other guys? Maybe it's a stretch. I think the biggest person on my wish list, it's kind of like when you have a Christmas list for Santa and you're 12 years old and hoping for a Lamborghini or a Bugatti or something. There's something unrealistic, and maybe even younger than that, because you're not even, you think Santa's still real. Hopefully I didn't just spoil that for somebody's kids. Think Santa's still real, and you think that's a realistic possibility. I have a big ass, so basically what I'm saying is my big ass for me would be DeMarcus Cousins. There's no reason he shouldn't be playing in the NBA. Somehow he's playing in Puerto Rico. He's dominating over there. I would love to see him play in the Big Three on an 8-game schedule, 10-game schedule probably, because whoever's got Boogie is probably making a playoff run. More than likely could be making a championship run. I'd love to see Boogie in there. And then continue to grow this game internationally, and I'm going to have to look this up because I can never say this guy's name, but I've been kind of looking at a couple of different rankings for the FIBA 3-on-3 rankings. And some of the guys I've seen, first off, we'll see what Aliens does. Aliens are going to bring in, they're going to do something. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but as long as they have Dusan and Ivo Shev at the helm, we could see Carlos Osmanis back potentially. He got a great opportunity this year. Maybe he comes back next year. We could see Machidi back next year for a full season. Now he's kind of used to the game, had a good game at the end of the year. Maybe we see him back for a full year. But I would really love to see, one of Osmanis' teammates, his Latvian teammate, is Norris Miezes. He's a beast. He's a top five player in terms of their individual rankings in the FIBA circuit. The number 1 player right now is Strahinja Stojakovic. I think that's how you say it. They call him Dr. Strange over there, and he's a Serbian guy, but he's nice. It'd be cool to see if somebody could convince him. I don't know if you can convince him from what he's doing. I don't want to say it's a big fish in a small pond, but what he's doing in FIBA, obviously he's got a lot of fans over there. He's been playing over there for a long time, and he's been dominating over there. But it'd be cool to see him make that jump over here, you know. So I think we're going to get a good mix. Obviously, when JC was on the show, talked about Marshawn Brooks playing. That'd be cool to see him again. Who's some other guys I have listed on here? I know Rudy Gay is like fresh out of the NBA, or he's still in the NBA, but he's a free agent right now. It'd be cool to see Rudy Gay if he doesn't get signed to a team. Mike Scott, he just went overseas. Would be cool to see Mike Scott. Jeremy Lin, someone who wants to get back to the NBA. Maybe it's a chance for you to play stateside again. That'd be cool. John Wall would be a cool one. I don't know how John Wall's still not on a team. I guess that would be kind of another big ask with Boogie, but maybe we get like a Boogie Cousins John Wall pitch going and have them playing again on the same team. I know they briefly did for Houston when they were with the Rockets, but maybe we make that pitch again. They get to hang out with each other again and hang out with some of the guys in the big three, but also be on a team together, try to go win a championship and some professional basketball capacity. Like these are just some thoughts I have, and maybe I'll be the one to make some propaganda and advertisements to get them back in this, to maybe at least get them interested, because I think it'd be cool. But I do think that those are heights that we can kind of look at now, and I don't think those are. I mean, some of them maybe more unrealistic than others, but I think there's legitimate chances now because of the way this year went and the credibility from the people that have been supporting this league have given it. So we'll see. I mean, I think there's going to be a few changes as well to some teams. There's always changes. I guess, yeah, changes every year. I mean, there weren't as many changes, I would say, this offseason because I think everyone's really invested. But, we saw Gilbert Arenas down the stretch not be the coach for enemies. We saw that Nick Young, Swaggy P taking that role. Maybe Swaggy P takes on a full-time coaching role with somebody else at the captain spot. I mean, you get to keep that whole team, and then you add someone there who knows what they do for enemies. I mean, you look at a team like 3-headed Monsters, who had their worst year to date. This is the first time they ever missed the playoffs was this year, and they have a 44-year-old Rashard Lewis, and then Reggie Evans will be 44 heading into next year. I'm not saying those guys can play, but we saw Rashard Lewis kind of taking a step back. I felt like a little bit in terms of playing time and at times not being as aggressive. Like, will they continue to play? Will we, hopefully we see Kevin Murphy back. But are those a couple of guys that maybe take a different step in their careers and add new players in that role? I mean, I don't know. Definitely have to be some openings for captain spots, I think, for some of these guys to play, whether it's captain or co-captain, but I mean, it would also be a monumental moment if those guys join the draft pool and those are some of the guys that drafted from. I don't know. I think they would need captain spots. So we'll see. I don't know what kind of changes we can expect. Trilogy has got a little bit older. They're gonna, James White's 40. Hawk is around 39, 40. I could be wrong. Sorry if I just aged you there, Hawk. But do they make some changes there? I don't know. Thinking Power's got to make some adjustments. So if you're new to the big three, the runner-up team and the defending champions, they get to run their teams back. But for everybody else, they have to drop everybody that's not a captain or a co-captain. So like for Power, they got to run their team back with having Glenn Rice Jr. and TJ Klein still on the team. Like those guys are going to fall back into the draft pool if you think about it. Someone like Giannis Time, who had a really good year for Aliens, going to go back into the draft pool. Really good shooter. Dominique Johnson, who's been on Killer Threes. Killer Threes was lucky to get him again. They might have to go try to get him a third time. Who knows? Unless someone makes him a co-captain. So definitely see some changes. I'm just curious what kind of changes we'll see at the top and what kind of new additions we'll make. I mean, I think it's a slow and steady thing, right? I think at some point the league will expand. I wouldn't think that they would expand up to next year, but hey, with all the possibilities I'm listing off and how many people want to play in this league, maybe they have the revenue to be able to do so. I mean, that would be cool, but maybe it's a slow grind. You add a couple of big names next offseason and a couple more big names next offseason. There's a ton of, and I posted this on Twitter today, recording on Thursday afternoon. If you really dissect it, there's a ton of talent in this league already. There's a ton of great talent. Not saying that you can never have more talent, but it's not like where the league was at one point when they were just hoping for talent, talented player after talented player. We have a lot of those talented players in this league already. So adding one or two big names per season, it may not feel like a lot when you say it out loud, but on paper, when you look at the league, you're like, oh wow, yeah, they're just adding to the level of talent that we already have in the pool. So we'll see what goes there. Those are some of the things I'm thinking about as we head to the off season, and at least from the league standpoint. Obviously, we'll start ramping up some more things and conversations around that. During the off season, on our end, we'll make our pitches, whatever the case may be. But those are some of the things I think that us as a community and fan base can start thinking about, and we'll see if the league maybe starts thinking about it. Sometimes they're already 2 steps ahead of us, but yeah, I think that's about everything. Just again, been a great year. The last thing I want to touch on here, and we'll wrap up the show after this, is off-season schedule. So I know there's a lot of new people that are new to the show, new to the league, whatever the case may be, come to us as a place of or a source of information. Excuse me, because I'm still suffering from my sickness last week, but they come to us for a source of information, which we greatly and highly appreciate. But I just want to let you kind of give you a lay of the land on how the offseason works, seeing as it's the longest offseason in sports. Basically, the way we run it is we go from a weekly schedule to a monthly schedule. We'll have one show per month, updating you on anything new, talking about anything in terms of what players are doing in the offseason, players for different clubs, things like that. That's typically the gist of what we're talking about. I would say from September to leading up to December, and then January kind of picks up a little bit different when we get a little bit more news and things like that. But typically, we'll go to that monthly schedule. We'll try to have an interview still with some of the guys that we haven't had a chance to talk to during the year. Try to have an interview within those, so they'll be kind of sporadic in the sense of they won't be on the same date, the same day at the same time each month. It'll just kind of be when we can get that interview lined up and then when we can get that source of information. But I will say that we always try to make it on the back half of that month, excuse me, because we want to be able to make sure we didn't miss anything for the entirety of that month. And we can kind of, consolidate all the information into one episode without missing anything or feeling like we have to save it for the next month. Some other things to look out for in this off season. Starting hopefully today, if I can get it done. It's been a little bit of a process, but at least before Memorial Day, start putting out season highlights of different players. So just full highlights of as many players as we can. We're going to start with like one player from each team, and we'll kind of go that format. There's other players that want a specific highlight reel done. We can try to get that done as well. I will do the best of my ability to crank out as many as I possibly can. I'm a one-man show. So that's going to be what we're going to see early in the offseason. Also going to see some things on YouTube from our in-person trip to Miami when we actually went to the games and attended the event. Want to post some stuff from there to kind of give you an inside look into what that looks like if you haven't already had the chance. So make sure you look out for that on YouTube. I mentioned continued interviews for each show. And then in the background, we'll be working on other things to kind of revamp what we're doing from a production standpoint. So some things to look at are hopefully we'll have new background for the visual version. We'll have new templates and designs for our posts that we're making as we're always trying to level up a little bit more. We'll have new equipment, hopefully, especially, I should say, we'll definitely have new equipment by the beginning or by the time 2024 gets rolling and that episode takes off. So some things to look out for. I mean, I've been doing this for 5-6 years at this point. I always try to upgrade just a little bit, but I really want to take a big jump. The league took a big jump, and I want to make that same investment too, to not only the players in this league, but the people that come to us for a source of information. Because I can't thank you guys enough for rocking with us all year, putting a lot of trust in us, supporting us, and just helping where you can to not only the league but to myself. Like again, I'm just a guy that really loves this league and wants to do anything I can to make people aware of it and highlight the players that are involved in this league. And so any support that anyone else is doing, whether it's been in person or it's been remote. Can't thank you enough. And so because of that, want to continue to invest in the show a little bit more and do a little bit of a better job, not only just with posting and getting the information out there a little bit quicker, but also too just to be able to just have better quality content out there. I mean, that's the most surface level way I can put it, but better quality content out there so everything looks really good and professional and done right. Feel like it can be shared and collaborated with, especially if it's a player interview involved. Want them to be able to share their words and their voice, but also do so in a way that doesn't look, in a way that looks clean. So some things to look out for. And then last thing I'll mention is this background will change a little bit. I've got a couple of jerseys that I have that I want to frame. No disrespect to Corey Maggette, but I feel like I need to switch it up a little bit. And then hopefully getting a couple more jerseys on the way. So see a little background changes as well as we get into next year. So lots of good things to look forward to for season 7. I just appreciate everyone rocking with us. It's been an incredible season, and a lot of that has to do with the people that support the show and has supported me as an individual. So can't thank you guys enough. But that being said, that's going to wrap up today's show. We'll probably have a show in September, relatively early into the month, only because they'll probably have the season awards that come out here at some point, and so we'll discuss those a little bit, and then maybe a little bit of surprise there. Don't hold me accountable for that. I said maybe up front, so I preface. But just keep in mind that we'll have a show earlier in September, and then the rest of the schedule will look a little bit different. As it gets closer to that April-May timeframe, we'll start to ramp up, how many shows we have, probably like 2 times in a month, and just because there'll be more information and things like that. But early in the off season, it'll be like definitely once a month. September, it'll be early in the month, and some things to look out for. But that's going to wrap up today's show. Appreciate everyone who's rocked with us all year. Congrats again to Enemies and to